We spend so much time tracking our steps, right? Monitoring heart rates, obsessing over cholesterol. But today, we're going to dive into a hidden, everyday metric that you probably completely overlook. Unless, of course, you're struggling to open a stubborn jar of pickles. It turns out the absolute most important indicator of your long-term health might literally be right in the palm of your hands. So let's jump right into this with a really provocative question. Can the simple firmness of your handshake actually predict your mortality and your cognitive health? Seriously, think about the last time you shook someone's hand. Was it a firm, confident grip or kind of weak? Because as it turns out, that simple biological action is a massive window into how well your body is aging, how resilient your heart is, and even how sharp your brain is going to be decades from now. It sounds wild, I know, but large-scale global research reveals this fascinating reality. Your grip strength is actually a better predictor of death or cardiovascular disease than your blood pressure. We all know how obsessed the medical world is with blood pressure, and, rightly so. But this basic muscular measurement is proving to be an even stronger fortune teller for your overall longevity. Let's kick things off by looking directly at the connection to heart health and mortality. To really wrap our heads around this, we have to look at the PURE study. And this wasn't some tiny localized experiment. We're talking about researchers tracking nearly 140,000 adults across 17 culturally and economically diverse countries for an average of 4 years. The goal was to definitively establish how muscular strength impacts global survival rates. And get this, they used a simple hand grip test to do it. Now, the specific metric that completely changes the game here is an 11-pound or 5-kilogram decrease in a person's grip strength. Researchers found they could map exact real-world health outcomes based directly on just this one specific drop in force. And the findings? Staggering. That single 11-pound drop in grip strength correlates directly to a 16% higher overall mortality risk from any cause. Plus, it's linked to a 17% higher risk of cardiovascular death, a 9% higher risk of stroke, and a 7% higher risk of suffering a heart attack. The data basically tells us that people with more grip strength and muscle mass are simply much better equipped to fight off chronic illness and defend against sudden disease. But it's not just about the heart. Let's shift gears and look at how this predicts cognitive decline. This brings us to a really fascinating study focused on young, healthy Latinos who carry a genetic mutation for autosomal dominant Alzheimer's disease. Now, why focus on this specific group? Well, their average age was just 38.6 years old. By studying people with this genetic marker who are essentially destined to develop Alzheimer's, researchers could actually observe physical changes happening way before the onset of dementia. And they could do it without the usual age-related issues like arthritis or general frailty muddying the waters. The results map out a stark reality. When you track the estimated differences in motor performance, the decline plummets into the negative almost decades before the expected diagnosis of dementia. The physical decline emerges long before any obvious memory loss or cognitive symptoms ever appear. When you follow this timeline, you see that a weakening grip appears a full 12 years before an expected dementia diagnosis. Then, that's followed by a loss of fine manual dexterity at the 10-year mark, and eventually a slower walking gait at about 7 years out. Think about that. Your hands literally sound the alarm a full decade before your brain shows clinical signs of failure. So, what's actually going on here? Let's unpack the brain-muscle connection. You're probably wondering, how on earth are my hands so deeply connected to my mind? Well, it all comes down to the neuromuscular system. We usually think of our brains and our biceps as, two totally separate departments, but they are intrinsically linked. This system is this intricate communication network where muscle activation, sensory feedback, and neural processes heavily overlap. Proper functioning here is absolutely essential, not just for generating a strong grip, but for executing complex cognitive tasks too. And massive research from the UK Biobank, looking at over 475,000 participants, backs this up beautifully. Amazingly, they found that a stronger grip actually correlates with physically larger gray matter volume in key brain areas, specifically the prefrontal cortex and the hippocampus. So this structural brain advantage directly translates into real-world cognitive performance. We're talking better memory, enhanced verbal and mathematical reasoning, and noticeably faster reaction times. Okay, knowing all these incredible implications for both your heart and your brain, let's talk about testing your grip strength. how do we actually measure and monitor this vital metric in the real world? Well, clinics and physical therapists use a simple handheld device called a dynamometer. It's super easy. You just sit with your elbow bent at 90 degrees and you squeeze the handle as hard as you absolutely can for a few seconds. The device electronically reads the maximum force your hand can exert. Establishing this baseline is incredibly useful if you want to monitor your neuromuscular health over time or, track your recovery after an injury. Now for the best part, training for a longer life. Fortunately, grip strength is a highly modifiable risk factor. You aren't just stuck with the grip you have right now. Training it is a simple, incredibly empowering way to actively protect your future. Let's look at a direct intervention. A clinical study looked at individuals with elevated and stage 1 hypertension. They had them perform isometric hand grip exercises, which basically just means squeezing and holding tension at just 40% of their maximum effort. Doing this for only 3 sessions a week over an 8-week period significantly lowered both their systolic and diastolic resting blood pressure. That is a massive cardiovascular benefit for a really minimal time investment. And hey, you don't necessarily need fancy medical equipment or heavy weights to start building this strength. Simple daily habits and household chores are fantastic for this. Squeezing an exercise ball, pinching and pulling therapy putty, thoroughly wringing out wet dish towels, or, my personal favorite, just refusing to make 2 trips and carrying all the heavy groceries at once. All of these indirectly build vital muscle mass and neural connections. Now, if you want a highly functional, full-body workout, you absolutely need to learn the farmer's walk or farmer's carry. It perfectly mimics real-life movements. You just stand between 2 heavy weights, hinge at your hips to grip them, brace your core, stand up straight, and just walk forward with steady, controlled steps. It challenges your grip, your core, and your cardio all at the exact same time. To actually incorporate this, the guidelines are super straightforward. Try performing 2 to 3 sets of walking 30 to 50 feet, maybe 2 to 3 times per week. Make sure you rest for a minute or 2 between sets. By adding just a few sets of the farmer's walk to your weekly routine, you aren't just building muscles you can see in the mirror. You're actively investing in your longevity, your cardiovascular resilience, and your cognitive preservation. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with one final thought. We've seen the global data, and we've tracked the decades-long timeline of cognitive decline. Your hands are literally telling a story about your future, right now. The evidence is clear. The only question left is, what is your grip saying about you today, and what are you going to do to change it tomorrow? Thanks for tuning in, and keep learning.